Okay, Said, go ahead.
Like everyone in this room and around the country, feel grateful that they have been released and reunited with their families. It's a good day.
Yeah.
In the same thing, journalists should not be punished for what they do anywhere in the world.
That is absolutely true, Said.
But we have seen yesterday is a premeditated crime to kill a journalist for doing their job. They were right there in the front of Ismail Haniya's home just to show the destroyed home from our colleague from Al Jazeera, Ismail Ghoul, and his cameraman Rami. And they were told by the Israelis to leave the scene. They did. They got in their car and they moved, and then they were bombed. I mean, that is summary execution, isn't it?
Said, I spoke to this a little bit yesterday, and the good news that we have relating to these American citizens who have returned, who will be returning to the United States. I don't have an update on this other situation for you beyond that. Let me just say, because you've asked the question, the reports that you mentioned yesterday as well, we've seen those reports. We're tracking the details. We continue to engage with our partners in Israel about any additional information. But beyond that, when we have talked about journalists who have been killed in Gaza, this is something that the Secretary has spoken to a great deal. We have time and time again offered not just our condolences to Palestinian journalists killed in Gaza, but we have attempted to make clear just how vital the work of journalism has been to showcase the ongoing dire conditions in the Gaza Strip, and how key certain outlets and certain media organizations, including Al Jazeera, have been to that line of effort. And that's something we will continue to not just say publicly, but we will raise privately with partners in the region. We'll continue to stress with our partners in Israel as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are also dozens of Palestinian journalists who are currently detained by Israel. Overwhelmingly, they're not charged with anything. They're held under administrative detention and so on. Do you call on the Israeli government to either charge those journalists that are being held under administrative detention or let go?
Look, Said, we've been clear and consistent that Israel needs to treat all detainees humanely, with dignity, and in accordance with international law, and the detainees' human rights must be respected. Beyond that, I'm just not, I don't have specifics as it relates to these specific cases to speak to.
But certainly you urge the Israelis to release those who are not charged with anything if they don't charge them.
I'm not going to speak to specific cases in the judicial system that I'm not tracking, but what I want to say again is that we've been clear and consistent that Israel must treat all detainees humanely.
Okay, a couple more quick ones. Was there any communications with the Palestinian Authority from U.S. officials to the Palestinian officials in the aftermath of the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh?
I'm not aware of any specific conversations to read out. I'm happy to check if there's anything said, but I'm not aware of.
Okay, and lastly, I want to just bring to your attention that an Israeli lawmaker was asked about the alleged rape of the Palestinian detainee, and he basically said, yes, it is legitimate. And as we look at the story, it is really appalling. I mean, it seems, pardon me for the graphic description that I'm about to describe, but they took a cell phone and they shoved it up his gluteus maximus all the way to the intestine, and they were calling the phone.
Said,
the Israeli soldiers. This is documented.
So
I mean, don't you find this appalling?
We are aware of these concerning reports, and of course, if they are true, they are appalling. The IDF itself has indicated that it is looking into these allegations, and we, of course, welcome that. It is essential that the rule of law and due process prevail, and in democracies, no one is above the law. And so we are going to let the process play out here. But of course, these reports are incredibly concerning. But there is an investigation taking place, and therefore, I don't want to offer any judgment until that process has concluded.
Okay, and lastly, on the negotiations, any update on the negotiations? Are they ongoing? Are they likely to resume? Are they frozen? What is your assessment?
As I said as recently as yesterday, Saeed,
Right,
we
yeah.
continue to believe that a deal is not just urgent but also achievable. We're going to continue to remain focused on working around the clock to narrow some of the gaps. Getting this deal done to bring the hostages home to end the violence in Gaza is incredibly important. And for those of you that heard the secretary at his press conference in Mongolia overnight, he echoed the very same thing.
Thank you.
Daphne, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can I just follow up on some of the comments Blinken made in Mongolia,
Sure.
where he said that getting to a ceasefire requires all parties to stop taking escalatory actions? The administration has repeatedly said that Israel has a right to defend itself. Is it the administration's view in the past few days that Israel has gone beyond that right at all, and that the actions have been escalatory?
I don't have an assessment to offer on the events of the recent days beyond echoing what the secretary has said. First, of course, that for us to get to a ceasefire, for us to get this region out of endless cycles of violence, for us to create conditions so hostages can come home, we absolutely think a ceasefire is necessary. And one of the ways to do that is to ensure that steps are taken that do not escalate tensions. The secretary has been engaging with partners in the region despite being in the Indo-Pacific. You all have seen readouts from a number of calls happen where he's been stressing the importance of that message as well.
And then you said yesterday that it was still your assessment that Israel was engaging constructively in ceasefire talks. What makes you confident that that is the case?
I'm not going to speak to the specifics of the ongoing negotiation process, but the question was posed to us whether we believe Israel was engaging in good faith, and that continued to be the case yesterday and continues to be the case.
And are there any plans for him to speak with Israeli counterparts today and the next coming days?
So we engage with our partners in Israel regularly. The secretary spoke to President Herzog earlier in the week. I don't have any specific calls to preview. As you saw, the White House mentioned, or the National Security Advisor responded to a question about a call between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu that we anticipate will take place later today. But beyond that, I don't have anything to preview. Camilla, go ahead.
Just following on the calls that the
Yeah.
Secretary's been making over the last 24 hours, 48 hours to Middle East partners, has the department reached out to Saudi counterparts at all to get any kind of reaction on the deaths of Ismail Haniyeh? And also Israel has confirmed the death of Mohammed
So
Deif.
we expect the secretary to partake in a number of additional partner calls. I'm not going to list them off as a list, but as is consistent, we will make sure to share readouts of those when they take place. But I don't have anything to preview.
Is there any concern that the Saudis might have the same sentiment that the Qataris initially had?
I'm just not going to speculate on what a call may or may not look like until it's happened. I don't have any specific thing to speculate. Tracy, you've had your hand up. Sorry, didn't mean to. No, you're good.
To my colleagues' questions
Yeah.
on the Middle East. Sorry to go back to the Middle East.
All good.
On those calls, is Secretary Blinken receiving assurances that these countries are still on board with this process of negotiation, or to the contrary, is he getting people backing out? Like we heard initially from the Qataris, they express reluctance. Let's say.
So look, I'm
Any
not
assurances
gonna,
one way or the others?
I'm not going to read out the calls more specifically than we already have been, and certainly I'm not going to speak for other countries, but there continues to be a consensus that a ceasefire deal, one that can, as I've said before, create the conditions for the remaining hostages to return home, create the conditions for humanitarian aid to get into Gaza, create conditions for further diplomacy to take place to get this region out of endless cycles of violence. Our partners in the Arab world, our partners around the world, our allies and partners, all believe that that is in the vital interest of the region, and that work is going to continue to remain ongoing.
I want to ask about how many times the USA asked Israel to investigate itself, and what is the result?
Look, over the course of this conflict, let's be clear about something first. Israel has every right to defend itself from terrorist attacks and threats, and to hold account the Hamas terrorist actors that conducted the horrific October 7th attacks on the Israeli people. over the course of this conflict also, when we have taken issue with action, when we have seen inconsistencies in how operations are conducted, when we have seen civilians impacted, when we have seen the flow of humanitarian aid impacted, we have raised those issues with our partners in Israel. We will continue to do so. In some of those instances, we will discuss those privately. In some instances, we'll discuss those publicly, but we'll continue to engage appropriately with our partners in Israel.
Will USA will ask a Palestinian civilian to investigate themselves?
Pardon me?
Will USA will ask civilian Palestinian to investigate themselves?
I'm not sure I follow your question. When it comes to our partners in Israel and their conduct around certain operations, when we have needed or solicited additional information, we have done that, and we engage with our partners in Israel around the clock, and will continue to do so.